Click. Click. Hello everyone, this is Take from BigHeadTaco.com coming to you from Revolver Coffee in Gastown. Now if any of you are locals here and are photographers, you know that Revolver Coffee is the place to hang out for photographers. We had the Leica Academy here last summer, and we had 2 Fuji events here as well, and there's going to be another one coming up this summer. And so this is the hub of where photographers like to be here in Vancouver, or at least one of the hubs. There are others, but I thought this would be a great place to do a release of a brand new camera. So everyone, the rumor mill has been going around for the last couple of weeks, and it is the new FUJIFILM X-T10. I still have the stickers on there to hide it because technically it is not May 18th at the time of me filming this video, but so I'm going to keep it on. I'll post maybe some close-ups, or you could just go to DP Review and you can see the close-ups there. But anyways, I thought I would do a very quick preview. Now this is a pre-release, pre-production camera, so I'm not allowed to post any pictures, but even then there's no point because the sensor in the new X-T10 is the same X-Trans CMOS 2 16.3 megapixel, the effective megapixel sensor that's already in the X-T1, the X-E2, the X100T, and the other cameras, and so we already know what the image quality is going to be like. So I'm not going to go over that. Even in terms of features, go to other websites that'll just rattle off. I have a little form here that rattles off all the different things in here, but this is a pre-production model. I'm going to just go over the things that most people want to know, which is, should I buy the X-T10? Should I buy the X-E2? Or should I trade in the X-E2 to buy the X-T10? Or if you're thinking about buying the X-T1, what's the big difference between the X-T1 and the X-10? I hope I'm saying this right, X-T10. So let's go over some of the main big features. I'm gonna maybe just keep these cameras here in front of me. The new X-T10, let's go over in terms of size. The weight of the X-T10 is, I wrote this down here, is the X-T10 is 381 grams, okay, for the body only, but it includes the battery and the memory card. The X-E2 is 350 grams, so it's actually lighter. And the X-T1 is 440 grams. So we already know this is a monster body. It's heavier, it's weather sealed, it's bigger and bulkier. But between these two cameras, okay, there's a different lens on here, but noticeably, is it noticeably lighter or heavier than the X-E2? 30 grams, can you tell the difference? It's very close, you can't really tell. I don't think you're gonna buy one or the other because of the weight. But in terms of profile and size, now, the X-10, the X-T10 looks a lot like the profile of the X-T1, but I think more people are going to compare it with the X-E2. So it has all the dials on the top, but instead of the ISO dial, they only have the drive dial there, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. The drive dial is also on the lower dial on the X-T1, but this one here is just the drive dial, okay? So other than that, there's a few little subtle things. It looks a lot like the X-T10, the X-T1, the big brother. But if you compare it in terms of size, you know what? The X-E2 is a little bit wider, but the X-T10 is a little bit taller because of that little fake pentaprism hump there. Okay, so it's a little bit taller. Yes, it's a little bit taller. In terms of specs, now what are the things that I like about it? Well, let's talk about the first thing I mentioned, the drive dial. At first, I was disappointed. I wanted it to have the ISO dial of the X-T1. They didn't give us that. But they gave us this drive mode. Now, at first I didn't like it, but you know what? I like it now. If you shoot different modes, like for instance, of different types of bracketing. I love shooting JPEG bracketing because I like the classic chrome, but it doesn't work in every situation. So I shoot Provia, either Sensia or Velvia and classic chrome. So it's just a matter of flicking it over here. And you get 2 different bracketing modes, 2 different continuous shooting speeds, and 2 different advanced shooting modes. And then you got your panorama and the multiple exposure. So if you like changing around in those features, this is actually very fast to change it. And to leave it in single, which is most of the time I leave it there, that's a very good feature to have. And actually it's better than the X-T1. I find that this lower dial, their drive mode, moves around a lot, and it often finds its way into the continuous mode and end up taking multiple rapid shots, which I don't like doing because I don't shoot sports. And so in terms of the dial there, in terms of the stiffness, the T10 is better than the X-T1. The other unique thing, if you take a look at this, is shebang pop-up flash. Now it's integrated really well. There's been a tradition of pro cameras not having pop-up flash, and that often goes back to the old film days where the all-glass pentaprism was so big and bulky that it took up the entire space of the pentaprism there, the whole bulk there, and they just couldn't put in a pop-up flash. And they've kind of continued that onto the DSLR Pro range. There's nothing that stops them from putting in a pop-up flash. And so I'm hoping that the next generation X-T1 will incorporate this, because this is really cool. It's a mechanical pop-up, because if you take the battery out, it still pops up, okay? Now it's another unique little lever here is the auto lever. Again, at first I didn't like it. I thought, well, obviously this is being catered towards amateurs, but you know, sometimes you're deeply in a certain mode. Let's just say you're in a certain setting, white balance setting, certain JPEG setting, you're in bracketing, you know, you have a certain aperture, certain exposure compensation, and all of a sudden something happens and you need to change modes. It actually is nice to be able to just pop into auto, and it goes into, they call it the auto, let me use this here, auto SR, advanced SR auto, which it actually predicts for you what type of photography you're doing, landscape, sports, moving subjects, and it guesses what you want to do. And everything is set to neutral, except I can actually see now that the exposure compensation still is active when you go into this auto mode. So at first I didn't like it, but shooting out there deeply into a mode that I modified it a lot, and then I need to go back to basic mode, I didn't mind it. If I can suggest one thing for Fuji though, it being auto mode, it'd be nice if that can actually also be a custom auto mode. So maybe not just auto, but auto with your own presets of white balance, JPEG, you know, if you're shooting JPEG RAW, even aspect ratio, if you can customize that auto, or even have it auto or custom mode. But then again, you also have custom functions that you can set up in here as well. So either way, I like it. Another thing that I like the X-T10 has over the X-T1, I'm sure I'm gonna mess this up. Anyways, is that the X-T1, because of its weather sealing, it doesn't have a threaded shutter button, and there's not much travel to it. And as I mentioned before, if they threaded this and then they put a rubberized shutter soft release cap on it, they can still keep it weather sealed, right? As long as you remember to plug it up if you need the weather sealing. But this one has a proper threaded one, so you can buy the little soft touch, release and put it on this camera. That's another cool feature on the X-T10. It also has, the X-E2 has it as well, is that this rear dial also doubles as a little push button. And this has the rear dial, but it also has the front dial, which the X-E2 doesn't have. The X-T1 does have it, but neither the front or the back dials are push button style. This, the front and back, are both push button. And so in certain features, such as in manual focusing mode, if you press the back, it auto zooms in and out. Now, I don't think the firmware, the operating menu in here is finalized because this is pre-production, but I don't think you can customize what these buttons will do. So again, another suggestion to Fuji is that if you can customize, if you can choose what these buttons do in certain modes, then there's no need. I never liked this X-T1's front button. I never put my finger there naturally, or if I hit it accidentally. Where this one, if you can customize what this button does, so that's another feature of the X-T10. I also found this little side button on the X-T1. It feels kind of flimsy, and that's one of the complaints people had. It's kind of rubbery and flexible, and it's meant to be weather sealed, but the X-T10 is a nice solid It opens and closes, it clicks open, it clicks shut, where your connections for the HDMI and the outputs are and the microphone input, 2.5 mil instead of the standard 3.5. Come on, Fuji. It has that, so this feels nice and solid. So that is in terms of just comparing the ergonomics and the feel for it. Kind of a complaint here, it came without a hot shoe cap. And it's not just Fuji, but a lot of manufacturers do it. This is actually off my Ricoh GR, and I just put it on here, but you know what, 10 cents. Guys, just give that little cap. Or maybe my pre-production model just didn't have it, but I think this should just be included. It looks nice, it's all closed off and such, so I think that is a good thing. View mode. Another thing I really liked about the X10, the X-T1, the view mode button is this little thing on the side here, and the diopter is a thing on the side over here, but the X-T10 is it's a lot more convenient. The view mode button's right there, and the diopter's right there, so it's much quicker. If you need to adjust it, if you wear glasses, and you tend to adjust the view mode quite a bit, which I do, so that's a great position for it. So those are the sort of the cosmetic ergonomic differences between. I don't think the camera can say. I wish this is on a tripod. Camera girl couldn't make it. So anyways, so between these three cameras, those are the basic ergonomic differences. In terms of shooting, now we know the X-T1 has the most beautiful viewfinder. Okay, it's the biggest, it's the sexiest. It's really nice. The X-E2 has this. With the recent firmware update that it had, the refresh rate and its ability to gain up has been improved. The X-T10, now they're bragging a lot about different things. What are they talking about? Best in class, large, high resolution viewfinder, blah, 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 blah. I find it's just as, other than the size of the X-T1, I find it's pretty much the same as the X-E2. There might be a millisecond fast or something like that. In terms of response time, again, I think they're all 0.5 startup time. They all have the same problem of when it goes to sleep, you have to wait a while for it to wake up, so it's usually faster to just turn it off and turn it back on again. So that part, it's very similar between all three of these cameras. In terms of finger real estate, your thumb here, I find that definitely it's smaller on the X-T10, and I don't have small hands for my stature, but I find it's just about the right feel for it. Now the grip in the front is better than the X-E2, but definitely not as nice as the X-T1. And there is, let me see here, in terms of accessories, there will be a hand, okay, there's a half case, and there's an MHG-X-T10 metal hand grip for it, so you can extend the grip on this. And I think that'll help because it is more compact. It almost feels like a micro 4/3 size kind of a camera that I remember playing with. It mentions there's a PSAM mode, so program, shutter speed, aperture, and manual mode dial, and I think people assume that it was a PSAM dial. There is no PSAM dial on here. Pretty much on all these Fujis, if you're not used to them, you know, the front here you have the aperture dial and you have your shutter speed dial. If you put both to A mode, which is auto, it's in program. And then if you start fiddling with the shutter dial, then it's in shutter priority. And if you fiddle with the aperture, then it becomes aperture priority. And if you fiddle with both, then you're in full manual. So PSAM exists, but there is no PSAM dial. But it does have, again, that quick into that auto mode if you wanted to shoot auto. If you're handing it over to someone, you have all these unique settings, just pop it into that. And it's reasonably smart, and it's taking some really nice pictures when it's in that mode. It has the flippy, floppy articulating screen that is not on the X-E2. And at first I thought it was a kind of a gimmick that was on the X-T1. And then when I was shooting with the X100T, you know what, for street photography and you like to shoot from the hip, this actually does come in handy. So as you're shooting, I'm not sure if I'm cutting my head off here, but if you're shooting and you cut it from the hip, it's nice to have it tilted. So it does help. And if you shoot overhead as well, it has that kind of the overhead mode. If you're trying to make your vertical lines not to kind of fall backwards, you can shoot like that. So I'm starting to like these things. They're not great for people that shoot YouTube videos that need it to flip up or sideways so you can kind of do that selfie mode. It's not for selfie mode. But for shooting down low or shooting up high, this does come into handy, and that's kind of, I wouldn't say it's a handicap of the X-E2, but the fact that it's on here is a nice feature. So price, I think that's kind of where people want to know where the price point is on the new X-T10. Now, according to Fujifilm Canada, so I'm going to give this in Canadian pricing and kind of guess what US pricing is going to be. Canadian pricing on the X-T10 is going to be, let me see here, I hope I didn't write it down wrong. It's going to be $899.99, so $900 Canadian for the body only. They give a kit lens pricing. Now they include the XC lens, so I'm not even going to quote that. Most are going to want to, I reviewed it with the XF standard lens, which is the zoom lens, the 18 to 55. And with that lens, it is $1249.99 Canadian. So if I was going to guess US pricing, I'd say probably $799 US or maybe $749 US for the X-T10 body, and perhaps anywhere between $1099 to $1149 with the kit lens US. So that's my guess. And there has been a recent price drop on the X-E2 on B&H. They dropped it by $100. I'm sure all the other dealers have dropped it. So perhaps it's a rebate from Fuji. So now the X-E2, the body alone, US is $699. This is the same sensor. So in terms of image quality, in terms of, okay, there's a few slight differences. And we know basically when there's a difference in performance, it's basically dumbed down because it's using the same sensor. So the biggest difference I can find is that this does not have the electronic shutter. Okay, so it's only mechanical shutter up to 1/4000th of a second. This, like the X-T1 and the X100T, it has the mechanical and the electronic shutter, so it goes, and you can either choose one or the other, or it blends into it. So once it hits 1/4000th of a second, mechanical, then it goes into electronic after that, up to 1/32,000th of a second shutter speed, which is great if you want to shoot wide open in daylight, which this will cap out at 1/4000th. This will go up to 1/32,000th. But there are some negatives like rolling shutter and things like that, so that we don't have time to explain on this video. So this doesn't have that. This does. In terms of value, if they drop this by $100 and the kit by $100, there's still only a $100 price difference between the X-T10 and the X-E2. Performance-wise, they will perform very similar. Frames per second, continuous is only 1 frame per second. This is 7 on the X-E2. It's 8 on the X-T10, so I don't think you're going to not buy it because it's 1 frame per second slower. But I would say this is the new X-T10 is the better deal. It looks fantastic. It's more compact and it feels a little bit more plasticky. So in terms of weight, I think I've already mentioned it before. This is 440 grams and this is 350. So it's almost it's a 100-gram difference in the body. So this feels more substantial. Performance-wise, we know it has that new USC Type 2 SD card ability. So shooting RAW plus fine and shooting continuous, this has a greater buffer. So if you're shooting sports and things like that, you're still going to choose the X-T1 over it. But as a backup body, this is a fantastic backup body to the X-T1. X-E2, is there a point to having an X-E2 and an X-T10? I don't think so. I think you either are going to choose one or the other. Because of this flippy articulating screen, you know, all the drive features and the shooting features have been moved to the right-hand side, except the drive dial, which I don't mind it on the left side. The X-E2 still has the drive button. Still has a drive button on the left side, and I don't like any shooting modes on the left side. I like everything near your thumb or your finger in the front. So in terms of ergonomics, this is superior as well. So at first when I saw it and I felt it, and I only had the X-T1 to compare with, I didn't think I would like it as much. Tommy of Revolver Coffee, luckily he had an X-E2 that I can compare with, and as I played with it a little bit and shot with it, definitely the X-T10, it feels better, especially with the front dial and all the other little features on here that it has. I would say, other than the fact that it uses the same sensor, ergonomically this is a better camera. So that is my quick preview. Again, I cannot show you any pictures from here, but again, it's the same sensors, the X-E2, X-T1, the X100T, so you pretty much know what you're going to get out of this. I'm still keeping my stickers here on it because today is Thursday and it's being released on May 18th, so I think you'll be watching this on May 18th on YouTube. So until then, I still have to keep all these things hidden so that people don't know what I'm shooting with. But I mean, come on guys, take a look. I think you can guess pretty quickly the family resemblance of this. No one's really asked me yet what this is, and if they did, I just say it's a review pre-production and I can't tell you what it is, but you can see the family resemblance. So if you have the X-T1, buy the X-T10. It's a great backup. It doesn't, and actually one more thing I was going to mention is that I whined about this four-way dial on the X-T1 because it's too flush, there's not much travel on it, and even this dial here is very stiff because of the weather sealing. Always said that the X-E2 had a much better feel without looking. This X-T10 has a concave four-way dial. It's concave, so even I actually like the X100T and the X-E2 over the X-T1, but now the out of all the Fujifilm cameras, this ergonomic concave four-way dial is the best feeling out of any Fujifilm camera available today. It's the best feeling. So shooting blind, knowing where all your buttons are, this is the best ergonomic for me in terms of the tactile feel of the rear buttons, and then including the push button on the front and rear. This is a very intuitive, fast shooting camera. The only shame to me is really it being bundled with the X-C 16-50 lens. People that are buying this aren't going to want the X-C lens, so personally I say stay away from that lens. It doesn't have the aperture dial on the lens. You have to use, which it has both front and rear dials that you can shoot it without needing that, but it's a more tactile feel. So if you're going to bundle it with the lens, get the standard XF 18-55 lens. So that is my quick, but maybe not so quick preview of this fantastic camera. Run out and try it. I'm not sure, the embargo date is May 18th. I'm not sure when it's available in camera stores, but Fujifilm, Canada, US, Europe, South America,